Okay, so now we're going to be rationalizing the denominator. If you have not watched the first part of simplifying square roots, I would highly recommend you do that first, as we'll be using some of those skills here. Okay? All right, so rationalizing the denominator. To rationalize the denominator means we want to remove any roots that are in the denominator. We don't want them there. So another rule you need to remember that we can always do is we can always multiply any fraction by anything that's equal to 1. And remember, anything divided by itself is always 1, okay? So here's what we're going to do. For this first number right here, the square root, or 5 divided by the square root of 3, what we want to multiply is by a fancy 1. Specifically, we're going to multiply by the square root of 3 divided by the square root of 3. Square root of 3 divided by itself happens to be equal to 1. So 5 times root 3 is just that, 5 root 3. In the denominator, I get the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. Now, if numbers are under the square root, we can put them back together. So this becomes the square root of 9. But that's nice because the square root of 9 is actually 3. So this is what my rationalized number is. Now, one thing to know really quick, numbers that are inside roots can be simplified with numbers inside roots. Numbers that are outside roots can be simplified with numbers outside roots whenever we're dealing with multiplication or division. Okay? All right, let's try this next one. So again, we're going to multiply this time by the square root of 10 divided by the square root of 10. So multiply those fractions straight across, we get 2 root 10 divided by the square root of 100. And the square root of 100 happens to be 10. So I have 2 root 10 divided by 10. Now, remember what I just said? Any numbers that are outside square roots can be simplified. And 2 divided by 10 reduces to 1 over 5. So this fraction reduces to the square root of 10 over 5. All right, let's try another one. Again, we're going to multiply by the square root of 6 over the square root of 6. And I'm going to simplify this a little bit quickly. So this becomes the square root of 6 over, well, the square root of 6 times the square root of 6 is the square root of 36, which is just 6. Now, I know those 6's look nice, but one is under a square root, one is not. So this does not reduce any further. All right, next example. Square root of 5 over the square root of 5. This gives me 5 root 5 over the square root of 25, which happens to be 5. And again, notice 5 is outside and 5 is outside. Those reduce to 1. So this we can reduce to just the square root of 5, or the square root of 5 over 1. We typically don't write numbers divided by 1. All right, let's look at a couple more examples. Now, the ones in the bottom 3 here are a little different because the square root in the denominator hasn't been simplified yet. So let's do that. The first thing we want to do is simplify the square root of 8. And if you watched my previous video, you should know that that's 2 root 2. Now, I still need to simplify this, so I'm going to multiply by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. Let's take a look at what we get. We get 5 root 2 over 2 square root 4. Now remember, numbers outside a square root stay outside, but numbers inside a square root can be multiplied back together. That's how I got that 4. All right, so what's that give me? That gives me 5 root 2 divided by, well, this is 2 times 2, or 4. That's the rationalized version. Let's do this again. Again, the square root of 27 is not simplified, so let's simplify that. So since 9 divides in there perfectly, we'd have the square root of 9 times the square root of 3. That's what the square root of 27 is. So this simplifies to 3 root 3. Now to rationalize, I'm going to multiply by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. This gives me 6 root 3 over 3 root 9, which is 6 root 3 over 9. Remember, this is 3 and this is 3, and they're being multiplied together. Now notice that I can simplify this. 6 and 9 outside the square root can both be reduced. Now I could have done that up here as well. Okay, that could have been done up here as well. And I could have reduced it before I started rationalizing it. You will get the same answer. But in this case, we simplify to 2 root 3 over 3. All right, last one. So the square root of 24, that can be simplified into 2 root 6. And this time I'm going to go ahead and simplify my two numbers here. 4 over 2. That simplifies to 2 over the square root of 6. Now, I still need to rationalize this. So I'm going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 6. So this gives me 2 root 6 over 6. And take a looky here. I can, once again, simplify even more. So when I simplify that, I get the square root of 6 over 3. And that is my simplified answer. Okay, hope you enjoyed. Good luck.